Ladies and gentlemen, this week has been the XDefiant open beta. They say that it is ending as of today on the 23rd. I wouldn't be surprised if it got extended for some of the weekend, but we don't know for sure as of yet. However, in my last video where I just kind of gave you guys a basic breakdown of what this game was, so many of the comments were comparing Call of Duty to XDefiant. And Mark Rubin, one of the people in charge of the game himself, has compared the two games very similarly. So what I wanted to do was make a video, put together my opinions, and explain the differences, the similarities, what is better and what is worse between these two games, because there are some pretty big things on either sides, positives and negatives, for XDefiant and against XDefiant, which are big differences between the two franchises and big things that will cause problems for either moving forward. So that's essentially what I'm going to do. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to start out by talking about the good things that XDefiant does better than Call of Duty. Then we are going to move into the things Call of Duty does better. And by the end, we can compare them and kind of answer the question. The thing that everyone is saying is XDefiant the Call of Duty killer? And there's an interesting thing to be said about that, but again, that'll be later on in the video. But first, let's talk about what XDefiant does right. So what I believe XDefiant is doing better than Call of Duty is actually the little things. It's not the big things that make the game complete or whole. It is the small little things that people have been asking for in Call of Duty that they are doing better than Call of Duty. So one really good example of this is the minimap. On the minimap, there are red dots on the minimap, but they're doing it in a different way where you have to be in a certain proximity to people where they will show up on the minimap, but it works really well. It gives you an idea of where the action is, and that is something that Call of Duty, specifically Modern Warfare 2, doesn't do very well. That's another thing I should mention in this video. We are going to mainly be comparing Modern Warfare 2 to XDefiant. There is going to be some other things to be said about other Call of Duties later on, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Also, XDefiant has a slightly longer TTK than Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 does. Now, this will change Call of Duty to Call of Duty, but as far as this one goes, it isn't a long time to kill by any means. However, at longer range, it does take longer with weapons like SMGs, assault rifles, things like that. And I think that's a welcome change and adds a bit more of a skill gap to the game as a whole. Also, the biggest one out of everything we're going to talk about, these next two are my biggest two compliments to XDefiant. Number one, it is free to play. Now, this is also going to go into the negative section as we're going to talk about later. But as far as the game goes, more people can get their hands on it because it is a free to play game. Now, I believe this is not currently on Xbox, but I think there is plans to bring it to Xbox. It's on PlayStation 5 and PC as of right now. But because it is free to play, more people will play it, which means a bigger player base, more longevity, more money going into the game in the long run. Also, no skill-based matchmaking. So there is skill-based matchmaking in ranked play, but not in any of the public matches. Now, I've seen a lot of people say that people are just crybabies about skill-based matchmaking and that it needs to be in the game to increase longevity, but here's my experience from playing the beta. I have played it longer simply because of the fact that every game is different. Not every game I get into, I'm playing against the exact same skill level of players who all play the game the exact same. There's no variance match to match. Whereas when I'm playing right now, some games I get into and I'm playing against world beaters, they completely destroy me and I learn things from that game. And other games, I get in games and people are absolutely awful. It causes me to get more kills, have more fun. There's differences game to game, which adds a lot to the experience, at least in my opinion. Now, speaking of that matchmaking, Ranked is coming out at launch, which is a very big thing. Call of Duty really needs to start doing that, and I have no idea why they don't, but it is going to be there at launch. And then the last thing is the maps themselves. There is so much variance to the maps within this game. There is maps on zoos. There is maps that take place at night. There is maps in downtown areas. There's maps in outdoor areas. They are very bright and very, very vibrant. This reminds me of the maps that we had in Black Ops 3, which is one of my favorite Call of Duty games. In fact, this game as a whole reminds me a lot of Black Ops 3. The thing with this game is that there is class abilities, specialist abilities, things that you can use in that way. The maps are very bright and vibrant, and I would even go as far as to say, and this is moving into the negative things, the game looks like Black Ops 3. The way that graphics were back then, the right way that the game looked back then, it just looks like that game as a whole and brings me back to that moment. We're going to go back to that in a little bit, but that's kind of where Call of Duty starts to do things better. Graphically, the way that the game looks and the way that the game feels, Call of Duty does do it better. Call of Duty has done it better than pretty much every other first-person shooter for years and years. The feel, the way that it works, the way that you touch the controller and move your controls, and the way that it reacts with your player, that's what Call of Duty is so good at. And if XDefiant wants to be better than Call of Duty, it has to work on that. Now, keep in mind, XDefiant is in beta. So what that means is that there is still room to improve. So where XDefiant does all these little things really, really well, where it falls short, at least in my opinion, is the big things. The jankiness of the game is really the only way I can describe it. There are a ton of stutters. There's frame issues. There is server issues. There's netcoding issues. And yeah, I don't run into them every single game, but I would say 1 in 3, I at least hit one big lag spike that really makes the game feel bad. Sometimes it feels as though I should be hitting a player with my bullets, and I just simply am not. And that is a really big problem when you are playing a first-person shooter. Remember, this is a beta, and in Call of Duty's betas, they have these issues as well. So until the game fully releases, this is something I will not fully judge until that point. But I will say as a whole, just the way that the game runs and the way that it feels just isn't quite as tight as the way Call of Duty performs. And that's what all of these games that are COD killers that come out really struggle with, is the fluidity of their games compared to Call of Duty. Now, I also believe that the gunplay in the game could be better as well. Again, it just comes down to that jankiness, but as a whole, I feel like the guns feel different, they feel good, and I have a lot of fun using the various different weapons in the game. As far as movement goes, I think the movement in XDefiant is actually slightly better than Call of Duty, specifically Modern Warfare 2, but not past Call of Duties. So in other words, it does Call of Duty movement better than Modern Warfare 2, but not other Call of Duty games. I think that makes sense. Now, this is where we start getting into the bigger things and problems that I believe XDefiant will run into. Now, first off, as I mentioned before, it is free to play. And what they do with that free to play content is worrisome. If the game comes out and they just sell a battle pass and different things like character skins and weapon blueprints and things like that that don't actually affect the way that the game is played, I'm good with this. However, microtransactions can get very egregious in free-to-play games very, very, very quickly. And in fact, we already know that once Season 1, 2, 3, and 4 come out over the next year, they're adding in new maps, new weapons, and we don't know whether or not these things are going to be behind a paywall. Does everyone who plays the game get access to these maps, access to these weapons, or is it just going to be the people that buy the battle pass that get the new weapons? And are they going to be better than the other ones? Are the factions only going to be available for people who buy these seasons? And are those factions and faction abilities going to be better? That is something that can completely change the game and make a free-to-play game not be free to play. It's then pay to win. So time will tell for that one, but at launch, it shouldn't be in that state. And the last thing, and this is something that I think a lot of people haven't talked about, is the reward system of playing this game. Now, this is something that I believe Call of Duty actually currently has a problem with as well. What I mean by that is, in past Call of Duty games, go with the original Modern Warfare 2. The reward system of playing that game was you get better at the game, you do better, you earn higher kill streaks, those kill streaks get you more kills, and that's kind of how the reward system of the game works. They also have other things like leveling up weapons, leveling up your character, unlocking new things. Now, XDefiant has those things. You level up your character and you unlock weapons, you unlock attachments. And now currently in the beta, that is not there, so there's a lack of reward system in that area. But one thing that I've seen a lot of comments with is people saying, I feel like there should be kill streaks in this game. And honestly, I kind of agree. I feel like adding in kill streaks to this game would make it even more rewarding. It feels like a game like the original Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops 3, where kill streaks should be super overpowered, maybe a little bit more difficult to get, but there should be a reward for doing better, going on kill streaks. I don't know. Maybe I've just played Call of Duty for too long and I feel that way. You can let me know what you think down in the comments. But this was something that Call of Duty ended up running into a problem with. And one thing that they did to reward their players, this was back a while ago, was introducing supply drops. This happened in Advanced Warfare, and the longer you played, you'd unlock supply drops, you'd open the crate, you'd get items from it. Now, people ended up hating that system, but it was a different reward system than just playing the game, ranking up your character. Having that reward system in a game is very difficult to do, especially now in the Battle Royale era of first-person shooters, because everyone just wants to get that victory royale, that win that big rush of dopamine that is very hard to get from an arena shooter in any way. And how games can do that moving forward, I think, is the answer to how a Call of Duty game or a Call of Duty killer can do even better than they currently do. But let's be real here. Call of Duty has been a top tier arena shooter and FPS for decades now. The only thing that can actually come along and kill Call of Duty is Call of Duty itself. So many previous games have been dubbed the Call of Duty killer, whether that be Battlefield 3, whether it be Splitgate, or all of these games that come out. And year after year, Call of Duty innovates and takes over those games because of its fluidity, because of how well it plays, and because of the amount of money backed behind it. The question is as of right now, players are getting fed up with Call of Duty. So a game like XDefiant coming out, who is very similar and free to play, can it take down Call of Duty? And to do that, I think they have to eliminate the jank, reward players for playing properly, and if those things are executed at launch, it is possible, but it's a long shot. That's what I have to say about that. So those are my opinions on XDefiant versus Call of Duty. I'm curious what you guys have to say down in the comments. I could be completely off base, but from what I've played so far, those are essentially my thoughts. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to stay up to date. We've got plenty more content coming, so make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are real.